If she doesn't make it, the house is already in my name. It will be over soon.
Then I'll give you the son your wife never could.
I love you, cousin.
Jane stood frozen outside room 7, one hand pressed tight over her mouth to keep herself from making a sound. His wife was dying in delivery, and he was out here celebrating with his mistress? If we don't get her heart back now, she's gone. Dr. Simone Admi pressed the paddles to Joyce Briggs's chest. The shock hit. Joyce's body jerked hard on the bed. The monitor stayed flat. No pulse. No heartbeat. Room 7 moved fast. Nurses changed blood bags, checked IV lines, pushed the crash cart closer, and called for more help. No one wasted a word. Joyce had arrived at Harlow Medical Center just after midnight. She was 39 weeks pregnant, pale, shaking, and bleeding more than she should have been. The placenta had torn. By 2 a.m., Joyce's blood pressure was dropping. Dr. Admi looked at the monitor, then at Joyce, then at the blood soaking through the sheets. Prep for emergency C-section. Now. Outside room 7, Nate Briggs stood with his phone in his hand, calm as a man waiting for takeout. His wife was bleeding on the other side of the doors, but he kept checking his screen. His mother, Hannah, sat beside him in a cream cardigan, purse on her lap, lips pressed tight. Farah stood close to Nate, introduced to the nurses as a distant cousin, though Jane had already seen Nate's hand slide to her waist twice when he thought no one was looking. Then the red light above room 7 flashed again. A nurse ran past with blood bags. A resident shouted for anesthesia. Someone pushed a cart so hard the wheels slammed against the wall. Hannah stood and grabbed Jane by the sleeve. Wait, she's still having that baby naturally, right? Jane stared at her. Ma'am, Joyce is hemorrhaging. Hannah did not let go. People say babies born naturally are smarter, stronger too. That is my grandchild in there, and I don't want some doctor cutting her open just because they're in a hurry. Jane's patience snapped. Your daughter-in-law is dying. This is not a parenting debate. Hannah's eyes hardened, as if Jane had insulted her instead of telling the truth. Nate looked up from his phone, bored more than worried. Mom, relax, it'll be over soon. That word sat in the hallway like something rotten. Farah touched Hannah's arm and gave her a soft, ugly smile. Don't worry, Mama. Even if this one doesn't work out, I can give you a grandson, a healthy one. Hannah's face changed at once. The anger eased. She looked at Farah, then at Nate, and for the first time all night, she almost smiled. Jane pulled her sleeve free, disgust rising in her throat. Behind the doors, doctors were fighting to keep Joyce alive. Outside, her family was already replacing her. Inside room 7, Joyce's pulse didn't just weaken. It thinned out in a way every experienced nurse recognized, like something quietly letting go rather than fighting to stay. At 3:47 a.m., the line went flat. She's gone, start compressions. The room didn't panic, but everything tightened at once as hands moved in faster, heavier patterns. Compressions beginning immediately, while another nurse called for more blood, and someone else adjusted the oxygen. That was no longer enough to matter. Dr. Admi didn't raise her voice, yet every word she gave landed sharp and exact. Because this was no longer a delivery, it was a recovery attempt. Charge! Again. The shock hit Joyce's chest and lifted her body slightly, then dropped her back into the bed, limp, unresponsive, unchanged. Nothing. No rhythm. No correction. Outside room 7, the noise from inside kept breaking through. Uneven bursts, alarms, shouted orders. The dull thud of movement, but the 3 people waiting didn't move any closer to the door. Nate leaned back against the wall, phone still in his hand, his posture loose, almost comfortable. He let out a slow breath, then spoke low, not bothering to hide it. If she doesn't make it this time, it's finally done. House is already in my name. Papers went through months ago. There was no strain in his voice, no hesitation, just a kind of quiet relief that didn't belong anywhere near that hallway. Hannah didn't ask him to stop. She didn't even look surprised. Her eyes stayed on the red light above the door, as if she were waiting for it to turn off. "You should have done that sooner," she said, almost under her breath. "Dragged this out long enough." Nate gave a small shrug, glancing toward the door without real concern. "Had to play it right. She trusted me, signed everything without even reading, made it easy." Farah let out a soft laugh, the kind that didn't fit the place, then stepped closer to him without thinking twice. Her hand slid up his arm, fingers pressing in like she already belonged there. "I told you it would work," she said, her voice light, almost pleased. "You've been stuck in that marriage forever." She leaned in, pressing a quick kiss against his jaw, not even checking who might see. "Now we don't have to hide anymore." Nate didn't pull away. If anything, he tilted his head slightly toward her, like the contact was overdue. Hannah finally turned to look at them, and for the first time that night, there was something close to approval in her expression. "About time," she said. "That girl was never right for this family anyway. Always was." Farah smiled at that, bolder now, her arm slipping around Nate's waist. "Don't worry," she added, her tone turning almost playful. "I'll give you a real grandson, a strong one. Not whatever's in there right now." She nodded faintly toward the door. Nate let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Yeah," he said. "This whole thing," he gestured loosely toward the room, toward the noise, toward the life slipping in and out on the other side. "It's been over for a while. Just needed it to catch up." Jane stood at the nurse's station, chart open in front of her, but she hadn't written a single word in the last 30 seconds. Every sentence landed too clearly. Inside that room, they were shocking Joyce's heart, forcing blood back into her body, refusing to let her go. Out here, her husband was already stepping into the life she hadn't even finished living. Another alarm sounded from inside. No one in the hallway flinched. Farah leaned in again, slower this time, pressing her lips near Nate's ear, her voice dropping just enough to carry. "When this is done, we should go somewhere. Get out of this place. Start fresh." Nate didn't answer right away. He looked at the closed door, then at his phone, then back at her. "Yeah," he said finally, "soon." Inside that room, a team was trying to restart a life. Out here, people were already dividing what would be left behind. Clear. Another shock. Joyce's body lifted again, then fell back into stillness, her skin losing what little color it had left, her chest moving only because someone else was forcing it to. Dr. Admi stayed in position. Her focus narrowed to the space between her hands and the monitor, because anything outside of that was irrelevant. Again, "Don't stop." Time stopped behaving normally after that, stretching into something thick and hard to measure, where seconds felt longer but still passed too quickly to waste. Then, without warning, a flicker. The line moved, hesitated, then dipped again before rising once more, uneven and fragile, like something testing whether it could come back. "Hold, wait there." Another beat followed, weak but real. "She's back, but she's not stable. Keep going." There was no time to pause, because Joyce's body was still failing in other ways. The bleeding not yet controlled. The window still dangerously narrow. Prep for emergency C-section. Now. The shift was immediate, the room reorganizing itself into a different kind of urgency, where saving Joyce and delivering the baby became the same fight. The first baby came out small and red, her cry thin but sharp enough to cut through the tension, proof that at least one life had made it through. Baby out. Needs support. But before that moment could settle, another movement changed everything. There's another. The second baby was delivered quickly after, smaller, quieter, but breathing on her own, her chest rising in short, stubborn motions that didn't match her size. For a brief second, the room registered it. Twins. No announcement, no drama, just a fact that shifted the weight of everything. Both babies were taken to NICU within moments, one struggling, one holding steady, while Joyce remained on the table, unconscious, her heart still fragile, her body not yet out of danger. Dr. Admi finally allowed herself a single glance toward the door, knowing who stood on the other side of it, then turned back without hesitation. There was blood on the floor, a calculation waiting in the hallway, and 2 children who had arrived before anyone could erase their mother. At 4:31, Dr. Admi stepped back into the hallway. Nate looked up. "She's alive," Dr. Admi said. There were 2 full seconds of silence, 2 seconds in which all 3 faces shifted from what they truly felt into what they had chosen to display. "Thank God," Nate said. The words were right. The tone was right. The expression was right. It was also a second too late. "When can we see her?" Hannah asked. "She's unconscious, and she needs to stay that way for now," Dr. Admi replied. "The situation is still fragile." Then she paused. "There is something else I need to discuss with all 3 of you." She motioned toward the small consultation room at the far end of the corridor, the one with the round table, the box of tissues, and the bare walls, the kind of room where important news is given sitting down. Jane did not go in. She had not been invited. But the consultation room had a window facing the hallway, and she had charting to finish at the station directly across from it. She could see their faces, even if she could not hear the words. She watched Nate take in the information. She saw Farah's hand tighten around the strap of her purse. She saw Hannah lift her hand to the gold chain at her throat and leave it there. Whatever Dr. Admi was telling them, it was not what they had been expecting. What Dr. Admi told them was this: Joyce Briggs had not been carrying 1 baby. She had been carrying 2. The second twin, smaller and positioned behind the first throughout the pregnancy, had appeared on the early scans only as a shadow. Dr. Admi had been monitoring both babies closely since week 21. During the emergency cesarean, performed in the middle of the resuscitation, the drop in pressure had been the very thing that made the resuscitation possible at all. Twin A was stable, 3 pounds 11 ounces, in the NICU and breathing with assistance. Twin B was stable, 4 pounds 1 ounce, in the NICU and breathing on her own. Both babies were expected to survive. Their mother was expected to survive. Dr. Admi delivered the news in that careful, neutral doctor's voice she knew how to wear when facts mattered more than comfort. Then she watched the faces across from her. Nate's expression shifted into something complicated. It was not relief. It was something else, arranging itself beneath the surface. The look of a man who had already planned 3 moves ahead and had suddenly realized the board held more pieces than he had counted. Hannah went still, but not with the stillness of someone receiving good news. Farah looked at Nate. Nate did not look back at Farah. Dr. Admi allowed the silence to stretch until it became its own kind of evidence. Then she said, "I want to be completely clear. Your wife is alive. Your children are alive. All 3 of them will need significant care in the coming weeks," she said. "Your wife," with the precision of someone choosing that word on purpose. She said, "family," the same way, when she added that the family's full support would need to be available. Nate was the first to leave the consultation room. His jaw was tight. His phone was already in his hand. Before he even reached the door, he looked at the screen, put it away, then pulled it back out again. Hannah came out second. Her hand returned to the gold chain at her throat, touching it once as if checking that it was still there. Farah came out last, and she did not look at either of them. None of the 3 said a word. A moment later, Nate turned and headed toward the elevator, not toward room 7, toward the elevator. Jane watched him go. Then she walked back to room 7 and stood in the doorway, looking at the woman in the bed, the oxygen mask, the monitor holding its steady rhythm, the 2 empty bassinets waiting beside the window, and she thought about the way certain things do not come together neatly, not without damage, but still manage to arrange themselves into something that can hold. Joyce Briggs regained full consciousness 41 hours later. In those first moments, she knew none of it. She did not know she had been unconscious for nearly 2 days. She did not know that her heart had stopped. She did not know that, 2 floors above her, the twins were growing stronger by the hour. What she did know was that Dr. Admi was sitting beside her bed. Not standing, sitting. Later, Joyce would say that was the first thing that told her Everything was going to be all right before a single word had been spoken. Because doctors who sit are not delivering catastrophe, they are staying. There are some things I need to tell you, doctor, Admi said. I am going to tell you all of it, and I am going to stay right here while I do. The twins' names came later. Joyce asked to see them before she named them. The NICU team arranged it with a wheelchair and with more care than was technically necessary, because Jane had made certain requests on Joyce's behalf, and the staff honored them without asking for the full story. The first time Joyce held both babies, one in each arm, under the soft light of the NICU, she did not speak for a long time. She only looked at their faces, tiny and red, and fiercely, stubbornly alive. They were both in there the whole time, she said at last. The whole time, Dr. Admi confirmed. Joyce kept looking at them. Nobody knew. I knew, Dr. Admi said. I had been watching both of them since week 21. Every appointment. Joyce was quiet for a moment. What happened with Nate? She asked, in the way people ask questions when they have already put together half the answer for themselves. Doctor. Admi was careful. She was honest. She gave Joyce what she needed in the order she could bear to receive it. Joyce listened, and her face went still in the way faces go still when a person is no longer deciding whether to be devastated because they already know they will be, but is deciding who they are going to become in response to it. She looked at her daughters. She thought about 3 people in a hallway. She thought about a doctor who had sat down beside her bed. I want to talk to a lawyer, she said, before I talk to my husband. I can help arrange that, Dr. Admi said, without pause and without hesitation. The lawyer came on day 4. Nate came on day 5. He brought flowers, real ones from an actual florist, stems wrapped in brown paper, the way expensive flowers always are. He stood in the doorway, looking at Joyce in the bed and at the 2 bassinets by the window, now occupied. And when he said her name, it carried the quality of a man who had rehearsed the moment and was now performing it. Joyce looked at him. Sit down, Nate. Then she told him what she knew. She told him what she had already set in motion. She spoke in the calm, even voice of a woman who had died and returned, and no longer feared the things that used to frighten her. He spoke after that. Some of what he offered were apologies, though they varied greatly in sincerity. Some of it was explanation, and she let him finish before calmly pointing out that she had not asked for any. He left 2 hours later. The flowers remained. Joyce moved them to the windowsill and looked at her daughters. She had chosen their names, Ree and Ren, her grandmother's middle names, names that felt right for children who had arrived against the odds. Ree was asleep. Ren was awake, studying the light from the window with the serious, focused attention of someone who had only just arrived in the world and was already taking inventory. It's okay, Joyce told her softly. We've got time. Doctor. Admi stopped by room 7 every day during the 12 days Joyce remained in the hospital. Not always for long. Sometimes only to check the chart, ask how the night had gone, or stand by the window for a minute. Once, when the room was quiet, both twins were asleep, and the afternoon had settled into itself, she sat down in the chair beside the bed, the same way she had on the first day. Joyce said, without preamble, "You stayed." Yes. In the hallway, while you were working. A pause. You already knew about them. Doctor. Admi thought for a moment. I knew some things. I did not know everything. But you sat down when you told me. I did. Joyce looked at Ree and Ren, resting in the soft light. Thank you, she said. For staying. For sitting. For all of it. Dr. Admi nodded. She looked at the 2 girls, so small, so determined, so impossibly here, sleeping in the afternoon with a complete piece of those who have not yet learned what came before them. They're going to be something, Dr. Admi said. I know, Joyce answered quietly. I think they already are. Some rooms go quiet at the wrong moment, but the monitors keep running, and the people who stay are the only ones who ever truly mattered. And sometimes what everyone in the hallway was certain was the end turns out to be the most complicated, most stubborn, most alive kind of beginning. The bassinets were not empty. They never were.